right, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players Podcast. This is episode 17, back after a week off. We are very happy to be back. We got a really cool topic to speak about today, and we are going to go through Extra Time Radio's best team of the entire MLS history bracket and give you guys our picks for what we think and who we think is the best team ever. But before we do that, as we always do, Scarf of the Week. Connor? Check. Connor's got his. Adam?
Yeah, I've got the preseason Red Bull Chelsea FC from like 5 years ago.
Oh, that's funny. I actually have that written down in some of my notes that the only notable thing one of those teams did, one of the Red Bull teams that are listed here, was beat Chelsea in the preseason. And then I am rocking just another Red Bull scarf. This one is from 2018 because if we're talking about the best teams in MLS history, you got to rep scarves from one of the best teams in MLS history.
That's not a Cincinnati scarf.
Fun fact, as things are starting to open up, I'm getting ready to start making trips and start getting new scarves, so I will have new things to rock soon.
I'll get one of those.
All right. It'll be different because this is a podcast. A lot of you guys probably listen to it more than watch it, so we will be kind of reading out the matchups. And we'll just kind of all give our picks about it and who we think, and we'll have a little debate if we have to. And 2/3 majority, so 2 out of 3 of us have to say yes for them to move on. And let's just jump right into it. The first matchup, 2017 treble-winning TFC versus nobody. Who do you guys got moving on?
I mean, this was tough. Nobody really put up a fight, but I think Toronto just kind of sneaked past them.
All right, so
I don't know.
2-1 TFC versus nobody. I guess they have to move on.
I guess they have to.
2019 NYC, the first real matchup. 2019 NYC versus 2001 Miami. This one required a little bit of research because obviously none of us were watching when we were 4 years old for 2001 Miami.
Well, I was 8 years old. Speak for yourself.
You old man. This was really cool because I like doing this because I learned a lot about the older teams. But I learned about how MLS did playoffs back in 2001. Did anybody see this?
Mm-hmm.
Each playoff matchup had a 3-game tournament between each team, and the winner moves on based off of a point system.
Yeah, they also didn't have ties and would take PKs from like 40 yards out. Our league makes no sense.
Bro, when MLS comes back, bring me back 2001 MLS. I don't care about this new, 3.
Oh, God.
I don't care. Give me 2001 MLS. But no, 2001 Miami finished first in the East that year, won the Supporters' Shield by a +1 goal differential in a 12-team, 3-conference league where they played 26 games, made it to the semifinals of the MLS Cup, and lost on sudden death extra time to San Jose with Landon Donovan, I believe was that team.
Mm-hmm.
Had the MVP and the Golden Boot winner in Chacon, and didn't make it to the CCL, and I don't know why. I can't find the rules on how people qualified for Champions League at that point. But yeah, please bring me back 2001 MLS versus 2019 NYC, who won the Eastern Conference, got their first CCL berth, lost in their first game in the Eastern Conference semis. Pretty sure they don't have a playoff win yet. Is that correct?
I think they have as many playoff wins as they do stadiums.
There we go. And then they have the second most goals in the league, but the most goals scored at a baseball stadium. Thoughts, people?
Most goals scored at a baseball stadium. That's tough to trump that.
That Miami team had Kyle Beckerman and Nick Raimondo when they were probably like 14 years old. So, I mean, and they also had backyard soccer legend and my automatic first-round draft pick every year. Every team I made, Preki. So
Oh yeah,
a little bit no-brainer there.
So if we're going by stats and the way the team actually was,
oh, all right.
What are we thinking? Because listen, if we were going off of teams that we like versus teams we don't like, there'd be a lot of changes in my lineup. I'd have a Final Four of Red Bull, and 2 Kansas City with the funky jersey.
Minnesota.
Yeah, Minnesota, exactly. So yeah, out of those stats, I actually had to put 2001 Miami through, and it's not because of my hatred for NYC, because NYC had a good year. I'm not going to go ahead and beat around the bush. They had a great year by the modern standards, but they lost in the first round again. They didn't have one player that really stood out. They had a bunch of decent players, and they were well off the Supporter Shield race. Yes, that's because LAFC was very, very good, but they couldn't keep up. So if we're talking about the best team ever, I don't think NYC 2019 can fit that mold.
Yeah, I put Miami through as well, especially just because all the financial stuff that was going on with this team. I mean, the fact that they still did as well as they did. I mean, they literally folded the season after because of everything off the field.
Wild.
Like, that's, yeah. So I put them through.
Connor?
Not that my vote counts at this point, but I also put Miami through. And one of the things that I did was I noticed that in the past they played less games. I think you mentioned that earlier. So I extrapolated the points per game to 34 games just to give it like a more even comparison between teams today versus like teams that played less games. So Miami on 34 games would have got 69 points. That's 5 more points than NYC got. And not only that, Miami won the Supporter Shield. Even if it was by 1 goal, they won something, and NYC won nothing. So I kind of see it hard to not put Miami through compared to NYC.
Yeah.
Right.
I was telling Andrew before we recorded, a lot of my picks have the prerequisite that you had to have at least won something. So some of the teams on this list, I don't know why they're on this list, but
we'll get into that.
But there we go.
Yeah, I think that's important too. I think if how are you going to be one of the best teams in the league's history and win nothing?
Mm-hmm.
Big facts. So we are all in agreement. Miami moves on to the next one. 2010 RSL versus 2012 San Jose. Again, stuff that we were watching but not too close and didn't really understand a lot. So let's break down what these teams did. 2010 RSL, first MLS team to make the modern era CCL final. Second in the Supporter Shield race by 3 points to the Galaxy. Only 7 losses in 40 games all year and 36 goals conceded in that time. And now I want you to think, we have always talked about 2013 SKC's back line being disgusting. You now work in 36 goals conceded in 40 games, including some of the biggest teams in Mexico that were just powerhouses. That's unreal. Then you go to 2012 San Jose, Supporter Shield champs, Western Conference semifinals. Wando sets the record for goals in a season at that point with 27, and they make the CCL berth. Thoughts?
This one was hard. I'm pretty sure I had RSL moving through. Yeah, I did. Just because of that defensive record. I mean, it's kind of hard to pass that up. Just because I don't think, other than the SKC team that you just mentioned, we've had that many defenses that have been that good. Like the last few years, we've seen just, the Atlantas, the LAFCs just blow past everyone in goals. Yeah, they may concede 5 in a game, but they'll score 6. There haven't been that many teams that just set up shop and say, we're okay winning this 1-0.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. You think about 2010 MLS. Think about 2010 MLS defenses, and then you're putting 36 goals conceded over 40 games, including in CONCACAF Champions League. Wild. Connor?
I agree 100% with Adam that this was really tough, and I'm totally fine either way. I think both of these teams are really, really good teams. Like, as you said, defensively, RSL, and then what Wando did with San Jose. Just comparing like some of the numbers, because obviously I wasn't even close to watching MLS at this point. So that's the only thing I have to go off of. But 34 out of 34 games, San Jose had 2 more points than RSL and had a +4 goal difference over RSL. And the big difference for me was the fact that while RSL was very successful, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they won anything that year. And and San Jose did end up winning Supporter Shield. And they had the MVP on their team. So I think that was the slight edge for me for San Jose as opposed to RSL, just because they did get a trophy that year.
Interesting. Okay, so I'm the tie break. And I'm going with RSL because of that defensive record. Because, again, if you think about 2010 MLS and you think about the pure awfulness that was MLS defense in 2010, and then you look at that record, you also look at them being second in Supporter Shield race behind one of the better LA Galaxy teams of the decade. And then they made it to the CCL finals for the first time ever for an MLS team in modern era. They didn't win anything, but they were damn close. And realistically, like, San Jose won Supporter Shield, but, one game here or there, RSL could have been the difference. RSL were a few games off of being one of the best teams in history, no question. So I got to go RSL there, but I agree San Jose was a good shout there. I think that was like, if they were doing a number matchup like they do in March Madness, I think that was like a 4 versus 5. So it would have gone either way, yeah. So 2010 RSL moving through. We move now to one of the 4 quarterfinalists, 2015 RBNY versus 2016 Colorado. And this one was actually tough because it was such a bad matchup. 2015 RBNY, first year without Thierry Henry, wins the Supporter Shield by goal differential. Beat DC United in the semis and lost in the conference finals to Columbus, as we do. Lost to the Union and PKs in the USOC quarters, which was the first U.S. Open Cup I watched, and I remember vividly. And then this was the year that we went and beat Chelsea in the preseason tournament, as Adam's scarf depicts, versus 2016 Colorado, second in the Supporter Shield, earned a CCL spot for the first time probably ever outside of when they won MLS Cup. 32 goals against 34 games, a good defensive record, and lost in the Western Conference Finals to Seattle. Connor, your thoughts?
I feel like I'm going somewhat with a similar theme that I did with the last one, because, yeah, like you said, there's nothing super spectacular about either team, but the fact that 2015 RBNY did win Supporter Shield, even if it was by like a 6-goal difference, they still won a trophy. Like, that's still in the record books. And
I'm just going to stop you right there. Are you now actually admitting that the Supporter Shield is a trophy and it matters?
It's more of a trophy. It's more of a trophy than zero trophy.
Oh, that's
right. What it's comparing against.
So we're going to go ahead and walk back on everything you've ever said.
Technically, it's not even a trophy. It's just a plate, but
it's a silverware, and it matters.
Well,
continue.
I didn't say it didn't matter.
Oh, you
this is a whole different debate for a whole different episode. Anyway, I went with 2015 RBNY. They had 2 more points. They had a plus 12 goal difference over Colorado. I think another thing for me is just I feel like Colorado had a lot of these guys after the 2016 season, and they just weren't good. So I feel like they got hot. They made a run. 58 points, getting second in the Supporter Shield feels kind of low. So it might have been some help from the rest of the teams not doing so well. But, the main thing for me is RBNY getting the Supporter Shield. That puts them through for me.
Yeah, I agree. That was the year. That was the first year Tim Howard joined, I believe. But if you look at it, they've got – you're right. Second in the Supporter Shield, right, with 58 points is weak. A lot of the teams in the Western Conference were very weak that year. LA Galaxy only had 12 wins and then pulled out a bunch of draws. RSL made it to the playoffs. Portland missed the playoffs. San Jose were awful. Houston were awful. Like, I'm not saying they were a bad team, but they definitely had an easier run that year. I also went 2015 RBNY, which, again, it was tough for me. I didn't want to seem like I was just picking all my favorite teams. But the one good year of the decade for Colorado versus the worst of 3 Supporter Shield wins for RBNY, and they did it without any of their real star players, right? TT was gone. Cahill was gone. Marquez was thankfully gone. So there weren't a lot of, like, big names there that could have, put us through. BWP was coming up. But, yeah, so one very important piece of silverware versus a decent year. Got to go 2015 RBNY.
Yeah, 3 for 3. The fact that they won definitely helps, but I looked at this team with maybe a little biased, obviously having watched them probably more than 90% of the teams in this bracket. But Andrew, how many players from this Red Bull team, would you take now?
Almost all of them outside of our outside backs and maybe our center back. Like our back line, I'll keep our back line, but anybody going forward, I'll
That's one of my points. So the Red Bulls have been fairly successful, fairly top of the table, and I say successful in quotes, but they've been better. Like they've been trending upwards the last few years, and the fact that most of the players in this team would walk into our starting 11 right now, I mean, that kind of put them over the edge for me.
So that's kind of what I mentioned. I had made a comment on Twitter the other day where if you watch any highlights from 2013 or 2015 RBNY, the pure just individual talent, not necessarily as a team, but the individual talent on display was ridiculous. Tim Cahill never lost a header. Thierry Henry made people look silly. You had players like Joel Impere who would just outwork people. Lloyd Sam outworked people. Luis Robles was the best goalkeeper in the league. Our back line was so old, but somehow we're half decent. Individually, they were very good. They just never could put it together. Versus Colorado, who just skated by into a CONCACAF Champions League berth.
I will say about this Red Bull team before we move on, not to spoil anything and give anything away, but we may or may not have one of these players on the podcast soon.
Oh, that's true.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Spoilers.
I'm not saying who, but listeners, just keep your ears out.
Oh, that's big stuff. Very excited for that, and we will get into that later on our Twitter and other social medias, so make sure you're following. 2014 LA Galaxy versus 2019 Minnesota the Loons. Big Loons energy. 2014 LA Galaxy, MLS Cup number 5, CONCACAF Champions League quarterfinals, all without David Beckham, second in the Supporter Shield, third top goal scorer and league MVP Robbie Keane. How that happens, I don't know. Oh, yes, that's right. He's a big name. And 3 All-Stars versus 2019 Minnesota, 4th in the West, U.S. Open Cup finalists, 15, 11, and 8 record.
They existed.
They were a team. They made it to the U.S. Open Cup finals. They had Defender of the Year, much better Goalkeeper of the Year, lots of good individual players, and nothing to show for it.
Yeah.
I'm going 2014 LA Galaxy because, really?
You can't not. Yeah, moving on.
Yeah. Connor, you want to add anything to that? Is there anything else you want to – but –
No, 100% it has to be LA. I'm not sure why Minnesota's on this list. As much as we all loved Minnesota's success last year, I don't know. But anyway, one thing I wanted to add about that 2014 LA team, they didn't get a ton of points. They got 61 points. But their goal difference tells me that when they beat people, they beat people. Plus 32 is wild for 61 points.
What was LAFC's last year, plus 40 something?
It was 48.
Yeah, plus 40 something. And I think the other really big one I saw was Atlanta 2018 was plus 30 something too.
Yeah.
So
Toronto
you think
plus
of those
37.
Two, Toronto, and you think of those teams that have these huge attacking, and then you think of LA Galaxy, and it's just yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, so LA Galaxy move on. Not a real contest there. 2016 FC Dallas versus 2007 Houston with the best left mid in the history of MLS, Brad Davis, as their captain. We go ahead and talk about 2016 FC Dallas. They're easily their most successful season ever. Did the double in the Supporter Shield and the U.S. Open Cup. Lost to Seattle in the MLS Conference semifinals because Seattle seemed to only win MLS Cup and do well in that playoff. Defender of the Year that year in Matt Hedges, and then won their CCL group and lost in the semifinals. Versus 2007 Houston, where they won MLS Cup, semifinals of the CONCACAF Champions League, semifinals of the Superliga. Did anybody look into this? Oh, man. Superliga was a middle of the season, remember back in the day when MLS had that break between July and August, it was 3 weeks for Gold Cup?
Mm-hmm.
They picked 4 teams from here and 4, kind of like the what is it called now? Like the one where Mexican and MLS teams play each other, like the mid-table teams play each other.
Oh, like when Atlanta played
Yeah,
Club
when Atlanta
America?
played last year, and
Got
they
it.
played, so that it was kind of like that, and they did in the middle of the season, and they won. They got to the semifinals of that. I think they came in third in the consolation game, third in the Supporters Shield, and just again wild stuff. 2007 MLS is something I want to see again. Adam, your thoughts?
I had Houston going through, which hurt me because this FC Dallas team, like when I think of FC Dallas, this was one of the teams. Like I was pretty new to MLS, but this would have been my second or third year playing fantasy, and I just remember having Dallas players every single week. Like I'm like maybe there were 2 or 3 weeks that I didn't, but like that, this is a team that when I think of FC Dallas, this is the team I kind of think of in terms of like who they had and how well they did. But it was kind of hard to pick that over the Houston team just because of how successful they were.
So it seems that we have a trend here on how we pick our teams.
Yeah.
Does Adam take their fantasy players? Connor plays with numbers. I actually look at what they did as a team. Wild.
Hey, I said Houston's success factored into there. I didn't pick Dallas.
You go ahead, Andrew.
I am going to go ahead and make Connor the tiebreaker because I took 2016 FC Dallas. Domestic doubles that early or domestic doubles like on Supporter Shield and U.S. Open Cup, that holds a little bit of weight for me. They don't happen a lot. Sometimes they'll happen like Supporter Shield, MLS Cup, because you're just a super team. But to be able to win the Supporter Shield and the U.S. Open Cup, which is a tournament completely separate from the league, that holds a little bit of weight for me. Houston were strong in 2007, no question. I mean, they only have the one title, and they made it far in CCL. Semifinals in the Superliga and third in the Supporters Shield. But doing that double, especially that it's not the MLS Cup Supporters Shield double, does it for me.
Where in Houston's history was 2007 in terms of
how old they were?
Yeah, that dynasty that they had for a couple of years. I say dynasty, but
yeah,
you know what I mean.
It was their second season of existence.
Okay.
All right, tiebreaker time. This one for me was just as tough as RSL San Jose, honestly. Because yes, Dallas won the Supporter Shield and the US Open Cup. And I don't want to discredit their Supporter Shield because, obviously you won it. That's fair. But they only got 60 points that year to win the Supporter Shield, which does not feel like a lot when you have, like RBNY and LAFC getting 70 plus to win it. Houston on a 34-game basis had 59 points, which is still less than Dallas. And then, as you said, they won MLS Cup. I'm sticking with the trend that I've kind of been going with in that Dallas won more in terms of trophies. So I'm going with Dallas going through.
Good boy, Connor. You scared me for a second. I'm not going to lie. I thought you were going to go and make a bad choice there, but good job. Proud of you.
I don't know if there's a bad choice in this matchup. Both teams are really good. They're pretty comparative.
But you would have gone with a pick that I didn't go with, which would have been a bad pick.
Yeah, I'm fine with either of these teams.
No, I agree. I think if you went either way, I wouldn't have had any.
Yeah. No, me neither.
Mm-hmm. All right. 2018 RBNY, one of my favorite Red Bull teams ever, versus 1998 Chicago with current Red Bull head coach Chris Armas.
And former Red Bull coach.
Yes, that's right. They were together. All right. What is there to say about the greatest team in MLS history?
Chicago?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I was about to say MLS Cup and US Open Cup double. No. Comeback Supporters Shield championship on the last day. Points record. Semifinals MLS Cup. 33 goals against in 34 games against teams like Atlanta and LA and all the big name teams. Semifinals of the CONCACAF Champions League done in by a young Tyler Adams mistake at midfield, poor refereeing and a bunkered in Almeida Chivas team that wouldn't break down for the life of us. Easily one of the best Red Bull teams to ever step on a pitch as a whole unit front to back. I genuinely don't know, outside of maybe right mid after Velo went down, that we had a weak spot on that entire team. And if we had brought in one winger, I genuinely think this is the best team in MLS history. But we didn't, and we lost a lot.
And we had Derek. What are you talking about?
Exactly. We lost the semifinals of the U.S. Open Cup, conference finals of the MLS Cup, semifinals of the CCL, and then we probably went out to Philadelphia in the U.S. Open Cup on penalties again. I don't know. I didn't really look at it. And then you got 1998 Chicago, MLS Cup and U.S. Open Cup double, third in Supporter Shield, first season. I think the league was together, right? Something like that. Was 98?
I don't know.
I think 98's second season, because 97 DC's on this list.
Yeah, fair. So yeah, then second season. Oh, it was Chicago's first year. It was their first year as an MLS expansion team. It was the seasons, yeah.
I'm saying league started in 95, guys, or 96.
Yeah, you're right. It's been that's a lot. But anyways, so there are your stats. There is your breakdown. Connor, what say you?
So, as I said with the last team, I went with the trend typically of more trophies goes through. But in this case, I had to change it because I just think that RBNY team, while they didn't win MLS Cup, I think if they get past Atlanta, they do win it.
Big facts.
They were super.
Shout out Chris Artemis for that brilliant tactical masterpiece of a first leg.
They were super dominant during the regular season. Even though they only won the regular season by 2 points, they were still really, really good, super deep. There wasn't like a shining superstar Robbie Keane on the team, but just everybody was good. You can obviously make the argument. I know we started a little bit earlier about Supporter Shield versus MLS Cup, which would be the comparison here between Chicago and RBNY. And I know Chicago also won the U.S. Open Cup, but I still got to go with RBNY on this one. I just think they were too good not to put them through.
Connor, we won the league by 2 goals. Who did we beat the league by? Who did we win over?
The team we lost in the conference finals to.
Remind me, my brain's not. Yeah, congratulations! You won a 4-game tournament versus a league. Are we gonna have that argument again? Because we can do it.
No, we're not gonna do it right now. That's for another time.
Adam, would you like to make your case?
I was actually at that Red Bull Atlanta game. So, fond memories. Not that it matters because it sounds like you guys are putting Red Bull through. I actually put Chicago through.
You're awful. I don't want to hear this.
I told you before we started this that you were
All right, listen. Yes, I understood you were going to have bad picks, but you're not allowed to have that bad of a pick. That's unacceptable.
So this was the only one that I wish the matchup was different because I wish both of these teams could go through. Because the fact that Chicago came in as a brand new franchise and did the double is ridiculous. Think about how many expansion teams we've had in the last few years. Yes, that have been successful, Atlanta, LAFC, but have done the double. And usually there are teams that when they first come in are missing pieces. They have, a star forward, but their backline's terrible. The fact that you can go on and have a full team that is capable of doing the double is pretty noteworthy.
Wild that I just didn't listen to anything you just said. 'Cause it didn't matter.
It's fair.
I want you to remember the quality of play in 1998, where you and I could have walked on the field right now and been some of the best players on the field.
I mean, that's probably true.
The playoffs that I looked at had teams winning 6-1 in one game.
Yeah, dude, defense doesn't matter.
Yep. Offense doesn't either, apparently, because they only scored one other goal.
Yeah.
The reason that 2018 RBNY get it, because they didn't have anything to say this is what we won this year. That the quality of 1998, I get it's double, but I can't give it to that type of quality.
Yeah, it was literally if it wasn't their first season in existence, I would put Red Bull through in a heartbeat.
It is wild that you are wearing a Red Bull scarf and you just disrespected one of the best Red Bull teams.
Technically, I'm wearing a Chelsea scarf.
Yeah, whatever. Moving on before I punch you.
Actually, I want to say one thing, just to play a little bit of devil's advocate against the Chicago thing. In some fairness, I think, as you said, they started in '96, so the other teams were only 2 years in, so it wasn't like they were super developed by the time Chicago came.
Yeah, that's like saying the team that won the '96 MLS Cup is the best expansion team in history because they won it in their first year. Like, that's wild. 2014 Seattle versus 2003 Chicago. 2014 Seattle, U.S. Open Cup winners, Supporter Shield winners, U.S. Open Cup Supporter Shield winner double, won the Supporter Shield easily. I'm pretty sure they won it by like 9 points or something. Western Conference Finals, year of Oba and Deuce. And then 2003 Chicago, Supporter Shield, MLS Cup finalist, and then I also have noted 15 wins in 30 games. Adam, would you like to make up for your poor decision?
I mean, Seattle goes through.
Thank you. Very good.
I mean, I don't know why. There's literally no reason behind this, but Obafemi Martins is one of my favorite ever MLS players. Like,
because he was one of the best players to ever step foot on an MLS.
I mean, that's no, but those just weird players that, like, yes, they're very good, but you just like them for whatever reason. Like
Alex Mawil.
I said good players. No, like, our shared fandom of Darwin Quintero. Yes, he's very good, but there's just something about him that
it's because I think it's because they pull off stupid stuff. Like, Quintero would chip keepers from 30 yards when they were standing on their line. Pause. Andrew Barnacle. It's because they did stupid stuff. Like, Quintero would chip player. This I actually have to take. But yeah, so it's because Obafemi and Quintero, they just did silly stuff. Like, Quintero would chip keepers from 30 yards when they're on their line. Obafemi would do, like, random Cruyff turns on the ball in the air through 4 defenders and chip keep, like, just silly stuff like that, like, nobody would ever be able to do. They would pull off, and that's why you love them.
Yes. Yeah. And he would backflip after goals.
Yes, backflip.
Oh, yeah.
Very good. Very good. Connor, any disagreements to 2014 Seattle?
Yeah, no, I went with Seattle also. I mean, it's pretty identical to 2003 Chicago because they both won the same trophies. But Seattle had 4 more points and 5 better goal difference, so I went with Seattle. Also, I know you mentioned Deuce and Obafemi, but they did have Defender of the Year Chad Marshall as well.
Big facts, yeah. They were just a very good team, and Stephen Fry was still there, and just a good team all around.
Yeah, it's one of the first, 17 times that Chad Marshall was MVP of the year.
Yeah.
Chad Marshall is ridiculous.
All right, so that is the first side of the bracket done. I am 8 for 8. Connor is 8 for 8.
Nah, I'm 7 for 8.
Oh, you're 7 for 8?
I picked San Jose against RSL.
Oh, that's right. So I'm the only perfect one. Go me. That's what happens when you pick teams based off their credentials and not based off their fantasy points.
I didn't pick because of fantasy. I picked Houston.
I love just getting under his skin. We love it. We love it. Moving on to the right side of the bracket. 2019 LAFC versus nobody. I got to go nobody here because LAFC couldn't beat the Galaxy. Bang.
I mean, there's a reason they couldn't beat the Galaxy.
We're not now. I take that back. 2019 LAFC moves forward because I'm not dealing with this garbage tonight. 2013 SKC, which we have talking at length about, versus 2005 Revs.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, 2005 Revs. I thought I saw 2006. I was like, oh, did I look at the wrong team? Anyways, 2013 SKC, one of the best defensive teams ever. MLS Cup, Supporter Shield runner-up to Red Bull by 1 point, 30 goals against in 34 games. That's wild. And then that 2013 PK shootout in the MLS Cup versus RSL versus 2005 Revs, MLS Cup runner-up, Taylor Twellman, MVP and top goal scorer, Rookie of the Year, and Michael Parkhurst, top of the East and runners-up in Supporter Shield. Here, I'll give my first shot here. No silverware, no advancement. 2013 SKC, welcome to the next round. I loved how 2005 Revs were good, but not 30 goals in 34 games, wild PK shootout in the final 2013 SKC good. But that's just me.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's I agree with everything. I mean, I don't want to say a soft spot for this Revs team, but my best friend, this is the team that he kind of grew up watching. And this, like, if you ask him about the Revs, it's Brandon, who's been on the podcast. Like, this is the Revs team that we kind of touched on when he came on. But no, SKC every day of the week.
Yeah, I went the same way. SKC won the cup. They get to go through. But this New England team had some fun players on it. I mean, Twellman, they had Parkhurst, Rookie of the Year. They had Dempsey on the team.
Oh, that's right. That was Dempsey's team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He was pretty good for them that year, too.
Okay. Moving on. 2008 Columbus Crew versus 2002 LA Galaxy. Quick rundown about each team. Columbus Crew beat 2008 Red Bulls in the MLS Cup Finals. Supporters Shield champ as well, so they did the double. Didn't qualify for the U.S. Open Cup Finals. No one had more than 9 goals for the club. 2002 LA Galaxy, MLS Cup, Supporters Shield double, runners-up in the U.S. Open Cup. Ruiz was top goal scorer and the MVP. And those are all the notes I have. Connor, go ahead.
They're pretty similar teams. Obviously, I would say you could take either one of these teams, put it somewhere else in the bracket, and there's a good chance they move on. But just because they happen to be against each other, it's going to make it tough because winning Supporter Shield and MLS Cup is not a common feat. So it's definitely something. It's a high achievement, and I ended up going with 2008 Columbus over Galaxy. I think U.S. Open Cup obviously doesn't have the weight of Supporter Shield or MLS Cup, and LA didn't even end up winning it, even if they were in the finals. Columbus had 3 more points than LA on a 34-game basis, and they had a 3 better goal difference. And kind of a little, I know this isn't really necessarily like a team achievements, but there were little things that pushed me over the edge for Columbus. But they had MVP, Defender of the Year, and Coach of the Year, whereas LA Galaxy just had the MVP. So I feel like that Columbus team was really stacked with a lot of great players. So I went with them over Galaxy. Plus, we have a lot of Galaxy teams in this already.
I'm gonna take over here and completely bash you for taking a tournament that happens in the middle of a season when you're already 30 games in is when some of the last games are being played, and getting into the finals, which means you played every single game that you could that year. And you're going to say it's not an important trophy?
No, I said it's just not as important as Supporter Shield or MLS Cup.
So I agree, but I think you also need to weigh in the fact that it matters on it almost makes your Supporter Shield MLS Cup even more impressive because you were playing extra games on the side when Columbus was just sitting on the side while you were playing. That's my view of it. I went 2002 LA Galaxy. They were literally a game away from the most impressive domestic treble because, as Adam likes to point out, the Canadian Championship's a little bit easier to win for some of the Canadian clubs. And I agree. So this would have been more impressive in my opinion. And I try my best to keep biases out of this, but I refuse to advance a team that denied Red Bull their first and only MLS Cup. So 2002 LA Galaxy, next round. I refuse. I'm not going to do it. That's the worst, probably the worst day of my life outside of the Roy Miller free kick. But I'm not doing that today. Adam, break our tie, please.
I went.
Break it in the right direction.
Oh well, now I just want to pick the other team. But no, I picked the Galaxy.
Yes.
I think had this one. God damn it. Yeah, I think if this Galaxy team had gone on to win the treble, I think it would be they'd go. I mean, they could probably go all the way potentially in this bracket, but I mean, I still have them going through. But yeah, I think they are clearly the edge over Columbus.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think you can look at an MLS Cup Supporter Shield double and one win away from doing the treble and just write them off as nothing. Granted, Columbus had a very good year that year, but 2002 LA Galaxy didn't knock the Red Bulls out of the finals. So, welcome to the next round, 2002 LA Galaxy.
I will say, I'll say one thing because you were talking about how LA had these extra games factored in because they had because they made it far in US Open Cup. I did some research. LA played 4 games for the US Open Cup that year, and Columbus played 2 games for the US Open Cup that year. So LA only had to play 2 extra games.
When did Columbus play?
Columbus had to play 2 qualification games to get into the US Open Cup.
Yeah, but all right.
Just in terms of the games played argument, not the fact that not the finals appearance was not.
My argument to that is that it was done in the spring usually, early in the season, versus when the actual tournament went up in the summer, which was when we actually played.
That's fine. So, that's fair.
In the heat of the season. Anyways, 1998 DCU versus 2015 Montreal. Adam's favorite Montreal team and maybe his favorite team in the entire bracket. But let's give a rundown of what's going on here. 1998 DC, Supporter Shield runner-up, MLS Cup runner-up, CONCACAF Champions League when it was known as the CONCACAF Cup. They won it, and they won something called the Copa Interamericana, which was the only U.S. side to do so, and it was a tournament between CONCACAF and CONMEBOL, which is South America. So they were playing teams like River Plate and Boca Junior, and they won the whole thing. Versus Montreal, who were the runners-up in the CCL, second team to get to the final, third in the West, Western Conference semifinal runner-up, Western Conference semifinals, and runners-up in the Canadian Championship, one of the most important tournaments in this entire list. Adam, thoughts?
So let's pretend that they actually won something and deserve to be on this list. They still don't make it through. I mean, we can joke about the Canadian Championship not being a real thing all we want, but they didn't even win that. So why are they here? DC goes through.
I agree. Like I said, when you talk about teams being good both in league and internationally, it's very rare you see an MLS club be very good internationally, right? DC United were beating teams from CONMEBOL, which is historically one of the best nations in world football. That's unreal. That alone, I think, has to give it to them. But again, all the other things that they at least became runners-up in multiple things, not just CCL. But so you had CCL and Canadian Championship versus Supporter Shield and MLS Cup, and they technically won CCL as well and an international tournament. Yeah, DCU gets the cake.
Mm-hmm.
Connor, do you have any disagreements? I would hope not.
I don't have any disagreements, but I will say that you seem to love your runners-up trophies because you love to mention all these runners-up.
I think it matters that we talk about where they finished in relation to the other team, as in Montreal finished third in the West.
I don't think you need to make much of an argument against 2015 Montreal. But I would love to see how good the international teams DC was playing at the time, because I have no clue what teams were like in 1998 in terms of like internationally.
I agree.
I have to assume they were better than the MLS teams.
I'd have to assume they were better than 1998 MLS. That's what I would have to go by. But I agree, that's a fair point. But just knowing what 1998 MLS looked like, I can almost assume. Moving on, 1997 DCU versus another great Canadian team in 2015 Vancouver. 1997 DCU, Supporters Shield champ, U.S. Open Cup runners-up, MLS Cup champs, third place in the CONCACAF Champions League, wins the Champions Cup, versus 2015 Vancouver, which were second in the West, third in Supporters Shield, qualified for CCL, and won the Canadian Championship. Adam, what do you think about the Canadian Championship?
The listeners can't see me, but I'm just shaking my head. Can we just move DC on and pretend like this is an actual matchup?
Let's talk about it, though, at least.
Do we have to?
Yeah. No, we don't. DC United moves on. We're not going to
I think if FCC ever found a way to win the Canadian Championship, Adam's head would explode.
FCC wins a Canadian Championship with Chicharito up front.
Oh, my God. He'd lose it.
FCC could win the Ohio Championship, and I wouldn't care. There's only 2 teams in that.
2003 San Jose versus 2011 LA Galaxy. A great matchup. One of the better matchups this bracket. San Jose, Supporter Shield runners-up, MLS Cup champions, U.S. Open Cup 4th round, CCL exit in the first round, 51 points from 30 games. 2011 LA Galaxy, MLS Cup and Supporter Shield double, CCL quarterfinals, U.S. Open quarterfinals. The magical trio of Beckham, Donovan, and Robbie Keane. Just one of the best MLS teams ever. I think anybody who thinks about good MLS teams thinks about this team. And in that playoff run, when they went to MLS Cup and won it, they conceded twice in all games. Both teams that LD played for, both MLS Cup champions. Connor, what say you?
It's kind of hard. I feel like it's hard not to put LA through here. I mean, obviously they match San Jose's MLS Cup win, but then they top it with Supporter Shield win. And they also put up 67 points, 20 goal differential. And not to mention that this is just like this chunk of time for LA, this early 2010s time, is quite possibly the most iconic teams in MLS. Like, they put MLS on the map.
Big facts.
These Beckham teams. It's just, they were so influential to the league, and they backed it up on the field as well. Like, they were just so good. One thing I will say, for the 2011 season, I think Robbie Keane only played in 4 games. So I know he was there, but he wasn't doing a lot. But you could still count it as the start of the trio.
Yeah, no, fair, absolutely fair. But you have to consider the fact that the 3 of them were together, and that in itself, like, you think about LA Galaxy period, those are the 3 people you think of, right, Adam?
Yes, I put the Galaxy through. I was so tempted to put San Jose through just to spite the 2 of you, but I have a headache. I've been on Zoom for like 8 hours today, and let's just move on.
I'm still baffled you didn't put Robbie Keane on your Mount Rushmore, but we're not going there.
We're not doing that. That episode's done with.
I love how we can keep drawing back too every time we bring something up. I love it. 2000 Chicago versus 2015 Portland. 2000 Chicago, MLS Cup runners-up, Supporters Shield runners-up on goal differential, and they were beating teams for fun, 6-0 versus New England in the playoffs, and they won the U.S. Open Cup. Versus 2015 Portland, who were MLS Cup champs, 5th in the Supporters Shield, 5th in U.S. Open Cup, and 3rd in the West with a 15-11-8 record. I'm going to go ahead and start this one off and say 2000 Chicago moves on. It's early on in league history, but to be runners-up in 2 competitions and a champion in the 3rd versus a Portland title that can be argued that they didn't actually deserve it, right? You had that first round where they had that double post in the PK shootout, and then they scored 30 seconds in because Steve Clark forgot to kick a ball. Like, that just messed everything up. I got to go 2000 Chicago here. No offense to our good buddy John Kasman or any other Portland fans here, but just it was a good season, not a great season. That's my take.
Yeah, had they finished higher up in the West or just in the league standings that year, and then gone on to win, I'd have said, maybe they have a better case, but they were a mid-table team the whole year and then kind of fell backwards in the MLS Cup. Yes, they obviously had to have been good in the playoffs, but
as we know, good in the playoffs doesn't mean good team.
Yes.
because bad in the playoffs doesn't mean bad team. Every Red Bull team I've ever watched ever.
Correct. So, yeah, I agree. Chicago goes through.
Good shout. Connor, anything to add?
I also agree. Chicago goes through. I think that this Portland team was average to good. I mean, they finished with a +2 goal differential. I think they just got hot at the right time and ended up winning MLS Cup and had some luck to help them along the way. So even though US Open Cup obviously doesn't hold as much value as MLS Cup, I still think that the Chicago team put in better performances.
Love it. Time for my favorite matchup on this entire freaking bracket.
Easiest one ever.
2018 Atlanta. Had it not been for Red Bull being the best team in the history of the league, 2018 Atlanta might actually legitimately be seen as one of the best clubs ever. They would have set the point record. They would have won MLS Cup. They would have won Supporter Shield, and the way they played was disgusting. Their fan atmosphere was something MLS has never seen before. They had everything except an Open Cup where they exited early because they played all their bench players and they weren't deep at that point. Versus 2019 Philadelphia, who got to the conference semifinals in MLS Cup, were 5th in the Supporter Shield, 4th in the US Cup. They didn't win a thing. They didn't finish runner-up in anything. They didn't even get top 3 in anything. How did they make this? Who put them on here?
You forget, Andrew. This team had Jack Elliott.
Stop! I can't right now. No, I'm not having this debate. I know Connor's already put Atlanta through. I'm putting Atlanta through. Adam, you're not even going to get a chance to say anything.
Obviously, I put Atlanta through.
Yeah, but I don't even need like any sarcasm or anything right now because it's just so baffling how ridiculous. By the way, I don't know if any of you guys were finding teams that you would have put on here instead of 2019 Philadelphia. I am honorably mentioning 2000 Kansas City Wizards with the funky kits and a double in MLS Cup and Supporter Shield. Both in front of Chicago, by the way. Fun fact. So that is my honorable mention team.
2019 FCC also gets honorable mention. If Philadelphia can make this list, why not?
I have no disagreements there.
It's funny you say that. I feel like I remember when I was researching this. I was probably researching 2000 Chicago, and I saw just all the stuff Kansas City won that year.
Yeah, right.
Like, why are they not on this list?
That's what I said. But shout out Extra Time, who put Andrew Gutman on FCC's Mount Rushmore and Brigitte Lacadia on FCC's Mount Rushmore for making this phenomenal table, which realistically is not terrible outside of like 3 picks. But let's move on to the next round.
Didn't they also put Alphonso Davies on their all-time Mount Rushmore?
Yes, they did.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So this is the final.
Before you go on praising them.
Semi-quarter. So we are in the round of 32.
16.
2017 TFC versus 2001 Miami. So we hadn't touched on 2017 TFC yet, so let's talk about it. The ever sought after Canadian Championship, CONCACAF Champions League berth, Supporter Shield win, broke the points record at the time, MLS Cup. You know what that equals? Treble. You know who has more than 1 treble? Nobody. You know who has more than 0 trebles? Only Toronto. Only team to ever do the treble. And again, versus Miami, who won the Supporter Shield by +1 goal differential, made it to semifinals, MLS Cup, lost in sudden death, first in the East. Adam, what do you think?
I mean, I'm amazed you didn't bring up Giovinco in that intro.
Oh, the striker?
But yep, there it is. The thing I wish for this team, and it's crazy to say, based on obviously what they won, but imagine this team with Pozuelo in it.
Oh man!
Oh my God!
Like, I know he joined 2 years later, but I can't help to think what that team would look like, and then I kind of throw up a little bit.
We wouldn't have stood a chance in 2017 against them.
No,
like we at least put up a fight. This team was seen as the best team before they'd won anything. The way that they played and blew teams out of the water, like when Red Bull took them basically to extra time and got in those fights and stuff, like That was the best game anybody's ever played against them in that year. And they were just disgusting. So I'm putting Toronto through. I'm assuming you are as well, Adam, the way you're speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Connor, disagreements?
Zero disagreements here. And I think even the scarier part is I don't even think that was Giovinco at his best in MLS that season.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what Giovinco at his highest would have been like for them. Like, it just would have been insane.
Remind me, who was in that midfield other than obviously Michael Bradley? Like, who was the one feeding all his assists?
Marky
Victor
Delgado.
Vasquez.
Okay. Yeah, so that's why I made the argument for imagine a creative number 10 like Pozuelo in that team.
Bro, Vasquez was one of the best creative number 10s in the league.
I understand that, but if given the
Imagine
option
both
between
of them. How
Pozuelo
about
and
that?
Vasquez,
well, that's like LA Galaxy back when they had everybody. It's like, where are you putting all these players you're signing? Like, you're just signing players for fun and they're just sitting on the bench. Or Chelsea, but whatever. MLS podcast. Chelsea back in like 2012 were the team that just signed everybody.
no, because our team in 2012, yes, we won the Champions League, but we also had like Fernando Torres and Demba Ba the year after as our front
Oh my
line.
God, ridiculous. We won the Champions League, not good enough. 2010 RSL versus 2015 RBNY. Already spoke about it. 2010 RSL, first team in the CONCACAF Champions League final. Second in Supporters' Shield, 7 losses in 40 games, 36 goals conceded. Red Bull, Supporters' Shield by goal differential. Lost in the conference finals, lost in PKs in quarterfinals of the US Open Cup, beat Chelsea in the ICC. I'm going to go ahead and get this one out of the way. RSL moves on. First RBNY team is out of the bracket, and this one was not difficult. Red Bull 2015 was the worst of the 3 Red Bull teams here. It was that team that Petke willed to the finish and got them across the line. That they were not supposed to be that good. Never were they supposed to be that good. And he just found a way to push them over the line with the mentality of a center back from 1996 MLS. And just I don't care who we play, we're going to win. And they I'm not saying they didn't deserve it. They played very well. But this is not a team that's better than 2010 RSL.
Fair.
Yeah, I originally had San Jose, obviously, but I also had San Jose going past RBNY, so I will agree on RSL going past RBNY, and same pretty much for the same reasons. I said 60 points was kind of a disappointing Supporters' Shield for Dallas. I feel like you could say the same thing for 2015 RBNY.
Sorry, I could answer this.
Since this is getting cut out anyway, someone just texted me 8 o'clock works for him.
Good.
So we're good for tomorrow.
All right, back into it. Sorry, I'm very important person. Connor, what am I?
What?
I don't know. What are you?
I'm essential, Connor. Remember that.
Sure.
Remember that.
Okay.
All right.
Galaxy.
Yes, 2014 LA Galaxy versus the 2016 FC Dallas team. 2014 LA Galaxy, MLS Cup number 5, quarterfinals of the Champions League. No David Beckham, second in Supporters' Shield. League MVP in Robbie Keane, 3 All-Stars versus FC Dallas. Double of Supporters' Shield and US Open Cup. Defender of the Year, won their CCL group, and lost in the conference semifinals. This was very difficult. I did not like this, and I think I have my first wrong pick here, but I'm gonna listen to what you guys have to say first.
Connor, go for it.
So I ended up going with 2014 LA Galaxy because while they didn't win Supporters' Shield, they outscored Dallas, who won the Supporters' Shield, and had a much higher goal difference than them, 32 versus 10. And the LA Galaxy team won MLS Cup. So, they didn't win US Open Cup like Dallas did. but I think they got a comparable trophy in the MLS Cup versus Supporter Shield, and I think that the Galaxy team proved during the regular season to be a more dominant team than Dallas proved to be, where I think Dallas kind of got by with weaker teams around the league.
Interesting. I'm going to go ahead and jump in on this one. I put 2016 FC Dallas, and here's why. They did the double of Open Cup and Supporter Shield. Can you name one big name player from that team?
Ryan Hollingshead.
Exactly. They did it. They did it with
Michael
academy.
Barrios.
They did it with academy kids and Michael Barrios. That's literally what they did, and Matt Hedges. That's unreal. The fact that they were able to run through the league, win Supporter Shield, U.S. Open Cup, lost in the conference semifinals to a Seattle team that was ridiculous in 2016, and then won their CCL group as well. That's wild to me. So I put them through based on the fact that they were so good when they weren't supposed to be versus one of like 8 LA Galaxy teams that you could have put in the spot, and they would have had this literally the same thing, except one might have been with David Beckham, one might have been without it. So FC Dallas goes through for me.
I'm pretty sure Andrew's just reading off my notes because I said the same reason for FC Dallas. The fact that they did it with homegrown players is kind of impressive. Probably a little bias coming from 2 Red Bull fans, the fact that homegrown players played a big part in our decision. But we'll win the Open Cup one day, Andrew.
Yeah, if Philadelphia drops out.
And DC.
Yeah. Wow. So I thought that was it. I thought that's where I was going to falter, but I have not missed a pick yet. We're still moving, and we move on. Let me get this out of the way, and we move on to 2018 RBNY versus 2014 Seattle, another ridiculous matchup. As we talked about 2018, best Red Bull team probably ever. Supporter Shield, runners-up in CONCACAF, runners-up in conference finals of the Cup, semifinals of the U.S. Open Cup, best team front to back, probably in the league, let alone in Red Bull history, versus a 2014 Seattle that did the Supporter Shield U.S. Open Cup double, Western Conference Finals, and had Oba and Deuce. So, this one was tough. It broke my heart. But 2014 Seattle moved on because Red Bull had nothing except a shield to show for it, while Seattle had an Open Cup, a shield, and a very good playoff run. That hurt. But again, if we're talking about best teams ever, Seattle were just better. And I don't know how I feel about that because now that I just read all of that off, I genuinely think 2018 Red Bull would beat 2014 Seattle. But they had nothing to show for it because that is what Red Bull do. They choke and they choke and they choke and they ruin my life. Somebody go. I don't care who. I'm gonna get sad.
Go ahead, Adam.
I had Seattle going through, Andrew. Don't worry.
All right, I'm glad we're on the same page here.
It's tough because this Red Bull team is probably arguably the best team that Red Bull's had. But
I think there's a genuine argument for them being one of the best teams ever.
But it's hard to argue that, though.
Exactly. It's hard to argue that. You can argue it, but it's very difficult when you don't win anything. If you don't watch 2018 RBNY like we did, you know that they were good on paper, but they have nothing to win. You don't know what they won. They just were decent. They were a good team. Like if we were talking about 2015 Portland, they won MLS Cup, but they were a good team, and that's it, right? And that's why I couldn't put them through is because 2018 RBNY, if you didn't watch them game in and game out, you had no idea they were that good.
Yeah, I was say that'd be like if the 2018 Atlanta team didn't win anything. Anyone who watched them would say, they were far and away the best team in the league by a mile that year. Joseph scoring for fun, like just all around greatness, but they didn't win anything. So
yeah, I completely agree. Connor, did you go against us on this one?
Yeah, I did. I went 2018 RBNY.
Wow.
And I went with it because both teams got Supporter Shield. So the differing trophies, the U.S. Open Cup. As I said before,
You don't
I,
like U.S. Open.
I don't value it as much as I value the other trophies. And I think 2018, RBNY's 2018 Supporter Shield was that much better than Seattle's Supporter Shield that it makes up for the U.S. Open Cup. Because not only did they get 71 points, they had a ridiculous goal differential, 29, but they did it against one of the other best teams in MLS history in 2018 Atlanta. They beat a team that many would argue is top 10 all time. So they were beating the best to get that trophy. And they outscored Seattle by 7 points. I just think that was a bigger achievement than winning the U.S. Open Cup.
All right, you get it. You're being real happy that you're recording this. If we beat you in MLS Cup, 2018 Red Bulls is the best team in history. But because we didn't win MLS Cup, it doesn't matter.
Well, you made the argument before that LA was a game away from winning the treble, and you gave them the advantage over that. RBNY was a game away from pretty much being one of the best teams ever, no question.
We were a game away from having. We were 2 games away from MLS Cup. We were 2 games away from CONCACAF Champions League, which arguably we might not have won anyway. We would have gone, and we might have lost that game. We were 2 games away from MLS Cup, which, knowing us, we would have choked there too.
I don't think so.
And we won a shield on the last day because Atlanta choked away.
Yeah, but you still won it with 71 points. It wasn't like, oh, we got it with 60 points because Atlanta got 59 on the last day.
Right. No,
you can't say you didn't earn it.
But if we're talking about important trophies, when we talk about both teams had both teams had the Supporter Shield, and both teams were very good. But Red Bull don't have the MLS Cup. And at least Seattle have U.S. Open Cup. Red Bull bounced out of U.S. Open Cup in the semis. But it's just the notion of winning. And I think Red Bull – I can't believe I'm bashing the best team that I've ever watched. What has this podcast turned me into? We're moving on. 2014 Seattle. Connor, great arguments. Thank you for standing up for a team that beat yours in the Supporter Shield race. But I think I can't move Red Bull on because of the disappointment they've caused me. They don't deserve to move on. If
they win that one game against Atlanta, like I think that Atlanta RBNY series was basically the finals. I think either team beats Portland in the finals. If RBNY wins that, it's one game and they would have had MLS Cup.
Well,
and I just think
don't go that far.
Man, Aaron Long off of Tim Parker's ginger head into an own goal in the 90th minute to lose. What was I going to say?
I don't know.
LAFC?
I
was going to say something about – oh, God, I don't know. It was going to be really funny. I don't know. Skip it. LAFC. It'll come to me. LAFC 2019 versus 2013 SKC. A little bit on 2019 LAFC, if you don't know about them already. Points record, Supporter Shield, Carlos Vela, beautiful play. You can't beat the Galaxy. 4 losses all season. And then a goal differential of plus 48. They were – what is a PC way to say just ridiculously good?
Whack.
That's how we'll do it. They were whack, as the kids say these days. I put 2019 LAFC through. 2013 SKC was good, very good defensively. LAFC lost 4 games all year. You don't tell LAFC that they lost 4 games all year and they lose to Sporting Kansas City. I don't care if they didn't get MLS Cup here. That's what I was going to say about RBNY is that important trophies matter. And in a world where everybody is saying that Supporter Shield doesn't matter. It's all about the MLS Cup. Compared to 2018 Atlanta, you can't give it to them, right? Okay, 2019 LAFC is going through for me.
Yeah. The thing that just makes me annoyed at this team is how do you lose 4 games all season and then the following season go, hey, you know it's a good idea if we get rid of like our entire back line? Because that could surely help you. Like Tyler Miller, gone. Walker Zimmerman, gone. Beta Shore, gone. Like, unless Villa's going to put up 50 goals again.
And they're going to lose 12 games.
That's what I mean. Like, we watched in the brief 2-3 games that they played this season, they look bad, at least defensively.
Yeah. I mean, listen, they had a lot of time to sort it out, so maybe all the attackers lost their edge, and they'll be all right. Sure. It's all a ploy to give LAFC the MLS Cup this year.
Yeah.
You wait. Connor, anything to add?
Not really. LAFC goes through. Their supporter shield was just way too impressive compared to Sporting's MLS Cup.
Right. Had it been like a point or two, then it's something we can talk about. But they won that thing by a ridiculous margin.
Yeah.
If this team goes on to win MLS Cup, is there any point of having a bracket?
No, not at all.
Just checking.
All right. So 2002 LA Galaxy versus 1998 DC United. Connor, go ahead. You go first.
Sorry. I was researching an old argument, but so I got a little distracted. You said it was 98 DC against LA Galaxy, right?
Galaxy.
I'm going to have to go with 98 DC. As you said, they won the 2 international trophies. In 34 games, they had 77 points, which is just wild. And somehow they still didn't win the Supporter Shield. So, they had some good competition. They only lost the Supporter Shield on goal difference, which kind of sucks because that team seemed really good. And where was 2002 LA? Where did I have the notes? 2002 LA had the Supporter Shield and the MLS Cup, which is tough to beat, but I think the 2 international trophies for DC can compare enough that the rest of DC's like points and goal difference can carry them over for me.
All right. I am going to step in and say I put in 2002 LA Galaxy because of the domestic double. So they did MLS Cup and Supporter Shield, runners-up in U.S. Open Cup. They were a game away from the treble. Being a game away from the treble for me, got to give it to them.
Even though DC go ahead. Take your time out.
I need to run to the bathroom.
Oh, my God. Seriously?
Okay. Yeah, so I had DC going through. Sorry, Andrew.
That's all right. I'll take my first loss here. I'm totally okay with that.
It came down to the fact that no other MLS team has done anything internationally since then. Like other teams have had domestic doubles, as impressive as it is. No one's had international doubles. I mean, granted, these tournaments don't really exist anymore, but MLS teams are historically bad abroad. So,
plus, like you said, they were beating like super talented teams that were most likely better than them.
So I don't know if they actually played like the Boca Juniors and the River Plates of the time, but players like Riquelme were playing in Boca Juniors, so that'll show you the level of some of those teams.
Absolutely. No, like I said, I completely agree. I focus more on domestic success versus just overall success unless it came to Champions League. Because, like I said, you don't really know who is in the Inter-Americanas or the Super Leagues or things like that. So those were really just kind of deciding factors for me. And with DC United being runners-up versus LA Galaxy winning MLS Cup and Supporter Shield double, that was my pick, but I'm completely okay with it. 1997 DCU versus 2011 LA Galaxy. Another DCU LA matchup, which shows you that makes sense though, right? Because they are the two most successful clubs in MLS history. So we've got a Supporters Shield champ, a U.S. Open Runner-Cup, an MLS Cup champ, and a third-place CONCACAF Champions League in DCU versus 2011 LA, who, as we've mentioned, just one of the best teams ever. Conceded twice in the playoffs, 5 league losses all season, MLS Cup and Supporters Shield doubles, CCL quarterfinals, had the U.S. Open quarters, the best team money could buy, just ridiculous all around. Adam, go ahead. Why don't you start us off?
Galaxy. Nice and easy. I mean, it's kind of hard to, like, if you close your eyes and think of the first MLS super team that comes to mind, it's this Galaxy team.
Connor?
I also went Galaxy, but not as easy for me because this DC team was really, really good. And just like you said with LA in the past, they were 1 game away from winning treble because they were a finalist in the U.S. Open Cup. But yeah, I'm going to go with LA. I mean, they ended up winning the same trophies, but I just feel like the influence, the impact that this LA team had on the league was just insane. Like, I don't think it could be overlooked.
Nope, I agree. I also went LA, and the deciding factor for me was quality of play, right? So we talked about how they won the same trophies. They kind of got to the same places in all the other competitions. So you think about 1997 MLS versus 2011 MLS, and while 2011 MLS was not phenomenal, it was much better than 1997. So LA Galaxy go through for me. Moving on to our final matchup in the round of 32, right? Is it 32 or 16?
16.
16. I can't count. I'm an engineer. Leave me alone.
True.
2000 Chicago versus 2018 Atlanta. So once again, MLS Cup runners-up, Supporters Shield runners-up, beating teams for fun, and the U.S. Open Cup champs versus one of the best teams out of the last 3 years with an MLS Cup, a points record that they could have had it not been for RBNY, and a Supporters Shield by 2 points they were off, blowing teams out of the water. I went 2018 Atlanta. I mean, it wasn't – again, it might be because we were watching them as they played, and it was far and away they were one of the best teams ever. But I just don't think 2000 Chicago being runners-up on two tournaments and a champion and a third is better than the MLS Cup that Atlanta won and the way they won it, because they were also a point off of Supporters Shield, or 2 points off. So Atlanta moves on for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you'll post this in the Chicago Reddit. So Chicago fans, please let us know, because obviously none of us watch this team. But the fact that all 3 of us have watched this Atlanta team and just seen them destroy everybody, bar Red Bull, that year, made it kind of easy.
I agree. Connor
May not have to say hi to the Chicago Reddit if he's kicked out of it by now. We'll find out.
Chicago doesn't mind us. Chicago doesn't mind us. It's
they might after this.
New England doesn't like us.
Montreal doesn't.
I also went with 2018 Atlanta. MLS Cup, as I said, weighs more for me than U.S. Open Cup. Not to mention the fact that Atlanta had more points and better goal difference, and we're just dominant in every way.
All right. So the Elite Eight.
Also known as the quarterfinals.
We could do that too, but I like Elite Eight. Back to the top with 2017 TFC versus 2010 RSL. I'm going to go out on a limb and start this one off and say treble winners 2017 TFC. Moving on for me, because they've done something that nobody else has done.
Works for me.
It's a really bold choice by you, I have to say.
You all agree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I want to give a special shout out to that 2010 RSL team, because they are so much better, and I don't think they get remembered enough. based off of what I just looked at. Like, when's the last time you heard anybody talk about, like, the 2010 RSL team?
Was that the team with Nat Borchers and his beard?
Probably.
So that's how I remember that team.
Right, but, like, they were so decent. Like, they might not have been good, per se.
That's the RBNY way.
The most backhanded compliment I've ever heard.
Well, I don't want to say they were good because realistically, what did they win, right? They got to CCL finals. They were second in the Supporters' Shield. They didn't win MLS Cup, but they had so many good pieces. And, yeah, they didn't win the treble. So
that's fair.
Moving on to 2016 FC Dallas versus 2014 Seattle. I'll let Adam go.
This was tough.
Right?
I didn't like this matchup. Both teams go through. That's the way this works, right?
Incorrect.
Oh, okay. I put Seattle through just because I remember more or less watching the Seattle team and just that attack was arguably one of the best in MLS. Like, I don't remember much of the rest of the team, but I just remember the fact that Deuce and Nova up top were just silly.
Yep. Connor, what do you think?
I want to keep mine short because I want to throw in a little extra thing here. But I also went with Seattle just because same trophies, Sport Shield, U.S. Open Cup. Seattle had 4 more points and a better goal difference, so they go through for me over that. Plus, Dempsey and Obafemi were stars in the league where, as you said before, Dallas didn't really have a star. So I feel like that team created them as stars. But the one thing I did want to mention, I did a little research, and this kind of went back to the last matchup for Seattle with RBNY. I did a little research on who Seattle played in the U.S. Open Cup, and obviously they don't have any control over that. But every single team that they played did not make the playoffs.
That's wild. What would you guys know about easy draws in international competitions?
Oh, I don't know.
Chelsea in every CONCACAF Champions League group they've ever been in? Yeah.
Man City gets way more easier.
Man City does get wild. Man City is the origin of the warm ballers. I completely agree.
Yes.
Shout out
Chelsea's gotten PSG and Barcelona coming out of the group stages for the last 3 times.
After that, they walk through the group stages with people from like Romania, and then they get hit with PSG, and it's like, psych.
Oh yeah,
our group last year had like Roma and Ajax in it.
Congratulations! It's the first time you had a decent group in how many years?
The group this year was not easy.
Wrong. Bad because Everton isn't in it.
You're damn right.
Never will be.
I also put Seattle through because if you think about it, you think about 2014 Seattle, you think about Obafemi Martins, you think about Deuce, you think about how good that team was, and then you think about 2016 FC Dallas, and you think about what did they do. I genuinely could not tell you. If I didn't do research on the podcast, I could not tell you what 2016 FC Dallas did. I always knew they were decent. I just didn't know they won anything, and that's why. So into the right-sided side of the bracket. Yeah, that's words. To the right side of the bracket, we'll go 2019 LAFC versus 1998 DCU. LAFC, 4 losses versus a DCU team I didn't even have moving on. However, they were good. Lots of international competitions, but I think if 1998 goes up against 1998 DC goes against 2019 LAFC, I'm almost certain it's double-digit goals for LAFC. I'm genuinely convinced Vela would have 10 goals, and then whoever wants to add on will add
on. Yeah. That's fair. The weird thing about this LA team, and I didn't really realize it until I did some research, but just Vela was obviously ridiculous, but there weren't goals coming from anyone else. Like, there wasn't someone next to him who had like a 20-goal season. Like, I think the next highest was like 8
Well, didn't Rossi have like 17 or something?
Well, no, I think like 12. I could be wrong.
That's not a bad secondary.
No, it's not. But when you think of the team that scored like 100 and something goals, like 85.
He had 16 in 2019.
All right, that's not bad.
Listen, I thought that I think you might have been thinking of 2018, which
maybe.
He had no help in 2018, but
Yeah.
Rossi stepped up in 2019.
Okay, fair
Anyway, let's move on. Connor, thoughts?
It's tough. Like, as you said, obviously LAFC would probably smoke 1998 TCU if they played right now. But I just think that's because players have just overall gotten better since then. There's better ways to train. There's better technology and stuff to help. So it's hard. Plus, LAFC, yes, they won the Supporter Shield, but they were so disappointing in MLS Cup. I feel like it hurts them. But I'll put them through. Not that it matters anyway. They were going through regardless.
All right, then. Yeah, I guess I have a soft spot for teams that do really well in regular season and flop in the playoffs. But
obviously, you don't, because you knocked out your favorite team that did that.
Don't start with me. I will go back and change this entire bracket. Don't try me. I'll do it.
Go do it. I was the one that supported them.
Our last Elite Eight matchup, 2011 LA Galaxy versus a 2018 Atlanta United. Connor, I want to send this to you because I want to see what you think.
The 2011 LA Galaxy. If Atlanta wins Supporter Shield, there's an argument, but because they didn't, Galaxy.
Adam?
Yeah, took the words out of my mouth. If this Atlanta team had gone on to win MLS Cup, I think they walked this matchup. Maybe not walk this matchup, but I think it's a lot easier. But the fact that the Galaxy team, again, when you think of super teams, this Galaxy team is number one on the list.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I agree. LA Galaxy move on for me. Final four. 2017 Toronto FC versus 2014 Seattle. And as a recap, 2017 TFC Canadian Championship, Supporter Shield, MLS Cup treble. First Canadian team to win the Supporter Shield, broke the points record at the time. We're just a dominant team that were blowing teams out of the water versus 2014 Seattle, which won the Supporter Shield and U.S. Open Cup double, made it to the Western Conference Finals, and had Obafemi Martins and Clint Dempsey. Lads, what say you?
I mean, Toronto. Again, you can't discount the fact that they won the treble like that.
But they won the treble with a trophy that didn't matter.
I didn't say it didn't matter.
Oh, now it doesn't matter.
No. If it was the only thing they won, it's essentially not winning anything.
Oh, it didn't count if it didn't help your case. Got it.
Sure.
I get the argument that Adam makes, and that the competition makes the trophy feel less valuable.
I completely disagree, and here's why. If it made it less valuable, TFC would have won every year for the past 5 years. They haven't. Montreal has won, and Vancouver have won.
That's the only two teams that stand a chance at beating them now.
Yeah, but my point is, like, if it was a more difficult, or if it was a less difficult trophy, they would have walked it, but they didn't.
So Andrew, besides Vancouver, Montreal, and Toronto, name a team that plays in Canadian Championship.
Ottawa Fury.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Let's say probably like Ottawa, one of the new Canadian Premier League teams.
But that proves my point.
Nantucket FC. I don't know.
Yep. Point proven.
I agree that it is lesser, but it should be weighed into the fact that they play it during the season, like the U.S. It's like the U.S. Open Cup for Canada.
All right, Toronto's won it 7 times, and they've participated 12. Just to give you an idea, and they were runners-up 3 times.
Yes, in the last how many years though? What were the winners in the last 5 years? What were the winners?
Toronto, Montreal. Oh wait, no, that includes 2020. So Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal.
So they won 3 out of the 5 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
If it was that easy, they would have won all 5. Especially to Vancouver. Especially to 2015 Vancouver. Don't start with me.
All right, well, then 2009 to 2012, Toronto won 4 years straight.
Okay.
And it's the same 3 teams. They're the only 3 teams who have ever won the trophy, and Vancouver's only won it once.
So do we lessen the La Liga trophy because only 3 teams will ever win it? No,
But more than 3 teams have won it. More than 3 teams have won it.
Do we lessen the German league trophy because Bayern is the only team that will ever win it? No.
But they haven't. Other teams have won it. There's literally only been 3 teams that have won the Canadian
Bayern have won like 8 in a row. What do you mean? Juve have won 12 in a row in Serie A. Do those titles not matter?
The Juve ones aren't as impressive because they've literally had history of paying off the refs. So I take their trophies with a grain of salt, but yeah, I see your point.
Thank you.
Andrew, just tell us if you put Toronto through.
Of course I put Toronto through.
There you go.
I don't want to hear any more about Toronto until we get past the last semifinal here.
Fine.
2019 LAFC versus 2011 LA Galaxy. I'm going to go ahead first. 2019 LAFC lost 4 games all season, won the Supporters' Shield, set the points record, but didn't win MLS Cup, didn't do anything US Open Cup. 2011 LA Galaxy did the double of MLS Cup and Supporters' Shield, got to the CCL quarterfinals, US Open Cup quarterfinals, and lost 5 games all year and conceded twice in the playoffs. 2011 LA Galaxy, welcome to the finals. Connor.
Yeah, no disagreements. 100%. You win Shield and Cup versus just Shield, you're going through.
Yeah, which hurts because, I mean, obviously we all watched that LA team last year, and it hurts not having them move. Yeah, like it hurts not having them move on. But
they did it to themselves.
I really wish they won MLS Cup last year because that would have been, like, this bracket would have been over.
Oh, yeah, no, easily.
Well, they lost to your favorite player, in fairness.
True.
The final matchup, 2017 TSC, treble winners, first of their kind, last of their kind, only of their kind, versus 2011 LA Galaxy, face of the league for the longest time, won 2 of the 3 major tournaments, runners-up, or quarterfinalists in the CCL and the US Open Cup, one of the most dominant teams of all time. Connor Wright, who is your best team of all time?
This is probably the first tough one that I felt like has come up in a little while, because 2011 is just so iconic for the league for many reasons because of how talented they were. And 2017 Toronto was just so dominant in winning trophies and being successful. I'm going to end up going with Toronto for this one, but this is kind of where I agree with Adam on the Canadian Championship. Had LA Galaxy won the US Open Cup, I'm putting them over Toronto because I think the US Open Cup would be more like a more valuable trophy than the Canadian Championship in this case. But they didn't. So the Canadian Championship is obviously going to be better than no trophy. And that's the edge that pushes me to go Toronto.
Adam.
Yeah, I picked Toronto as well, which it's weird, and it's kind of weird. Like the fact that Toronto I don't feel like they get as much credit as they maybe like when you think of the face of MLS, like Connor just said, you think of that Galaxy team. Like Canadian teams, I say Canadian teams, Toronto doesn't get that kind of like big spotlight being from Canada, as at least in as far as I've seen in our kind of media coverage in this country.
You want to know why?
Because it's not the LA Galaxy.
No, because 2018 Toronto FC was one of the worst teams I've ever watched in my life. If they had followed up and became a dynasty like LA Galaxy did, you would look back at that 2017 TFC team and think they were the greatest thing ever. But because they came back in 2018, didn't make the playoffs, didn't push for anything, the only good thing they did was beat Atlanta so we could win Supporters' Shield. That is the reason nobody talks about them, is because they had one good year, they won everything, and then just flopped.
So did that Galaxy team become a dynasty because it was arguably the most expensive team by far in the league by then? Because
LA Galaxy became a dynasty because Don Garber gave them a rule so they could become a dynasty.
Right. That Toronto team, other than Giovinco, didn't really have there were no expensive players on that team, as far as I'm aware of.
Josie Altidore cost $6 million. Michael Bradley made $6 million. Giovinco made $8 million, I think.
Yeah, compared to Beckham, who was promised an entire franchise when he signed.
Granted, I don't disagree that they were paid more. But to say that they had no big names or
I'm not saying no big names, but compare the three highest paid at Toronto and the three highest paid at the Galaxy, and I don't think it comes close.
That's genuinely interesting because I don't know what type of money they were spending in 2011.
I don't either, but genuinely the fact that Beckham came in and the league was like, yeah, you can have a clause in your contract that says in the future we will allow you to build your own franchise. On what planet does that rule exist? That there's a player who can come in and demand a franchise be built?
I completely agree. And I think Connor said it best that if LA Galaxy did the treble with US Open Cup, no question.
Yeah.
Because he's absolutely right. There are more rounds they have to play. There are tougher teams they have to get through. And it's more influential. But because they didn't, and TFC are still the only team with an actual domestic treble, TFC are the greatest team in MLS history. There is no arguing it. There is no debating it. We can sit here all day and talk about how LA Galaxy paid more for their players and made it look good and became the dynasty that the league was known for. But Toronto FC, records holding, are the best team in MLS history. Guys, if you've made it this far, let us know if you agree, disagree. Let us know who we picked that you didn't. And we hope you enjoyed. Make sure you're following us everywhere you get your podcast so you know when our next episode goes live. Make sure you're following us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, because we've got some great interviews coming up. And I will let Adam go ahead and talk about those for a second.
Am I spoiling them?
You can drop some names that we've definitely confirmed.
Okay, so we're actually recording our next episode tomorrow when you guys listen to this. But we have former Leeds United and South African striker Davide Soma coming on as an interview, and then we'll kind of dive into his background and playing career. And the episode after that, so episode 19, we have actually our first double interview. Davide is coming back as a guest, but he's bringing along someone that Andrew will probably start crying when he sees.
I will lose my mind.
The wonderful Greladino himself, Mr. Mike Grella. So it should be quite interesting to have the five of us try to talk over each other.
Oh my God, I don't know. You guys are gonna have to kick me off every time you ask a question, just because I'm gonna have to just talk all the time because I have so many questions.
I'll just have you on mute.
Yeah, you're gonna have to. I don't know. I don't know if I'll be able to contain myself. But guys, lots of really exciting things coming up. We've got other pro players in the wings, trying to get them on as well. We are slowly and surely starting to build up some really cool interviews. Not that our other interviews were not cool. We had a great time with them, but in terms of stature and the people that we'll be speaking to, we're really excited, and we hope you guys are too. So make sure you give us a follow or a subscribe if you're excited to hear those and you want to hear them come as soon as they come out. And other than that, does anybody have anything else to say?
Nope.
Yeah, I couldn't think of a question of the day. I was too busy getting ready to yell at you guys if you didn't pick TFC. So all that prep time was wasted, thankfully, because if you didn't, we'd be here for a lot longer. But like I said, make sure you're following us everywhere so you can get ready for those cool interviews coming up. And until next time, we will see you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players Podcast. See ya.